So have you ever wondered if it's worth it to pay a professional mastering engineer to master your tracks? Will the result be so much better than you can do it yourself? How much does it cost? Don't worry, we used 4 different mastering houses at a variety of prices, and the results are not as expected. Let's have a look. So we have a track called Over that we're planning on releasing on Spotify, etc. And we thought this was the perfect track and time to have this experiment with the mastering houses. So stay tuned to the end of this video where we give you the results, but also some tips on how to prepare your tracks for mastering and what you can expect the mastering engineer to do. So with this track we had referenced the David Guetta Little Mix track, Heartbreak Anthem, very closely. And we were happy with the mix prior to mastering. By the way, I cannot stress enough how important it is to reference a similar commercially released track when mixing and mastering your own. Sometimes the frequency balance is very different to yours. So as I said, we approached 4 different mastering services at a variety of prices, 3 humans and 1 AI. We said the same things to all the engineers, e.g. what reference track we used and what we're shooting for. On top of this, we specifically wanted their thoughts on our mix prior to mastering, as one record label had told us that it actually needs remixing. So with some doubt in our mind, we wanted to make sure and double check that the mix was ready for mastering. Just so you know, the mastering won't fix your mix. The mixing has to be done at the mixing stage. You need to get your mix 99% ready at least before it goes to mastering. In this video we won't be mentioning any engineers' names because that's just not our style. Let's start having a look at the results. The first one we're going to start off with is a human. It's a mid-price range, about £80 per track including tax, although it does vary from person to person. This is on the Sound Better website with lots of apparently top-class mastering engineers and other professionals as well. There are many to choose from, so I took my time in selecting an engineer by looking at the style of music that they were most familiar with, and also one that had great reviews and plenty of them. So I chose my engineer, told them what we're looking for, the reference track, etc, and sent off our mix. So we would expect mastering to take between 3 and 5 days, as it's a very skilled and detailed process. So with Sound Better, how long did the master take? 45 minutes? This is a huge red flag. There's a slight caveat to this. We have another song that we also submitted to this person, and this was submitted a few days previously. So perhaps they just applied the same processing to the new track as the other one had already been mastered. Either way, we would expect that each track take around between 3 and 5 days. And you shouldn't just be applying the same process from one track to the next. They are completely separate entities. But let's not make a judgment on the time it took, let's make a judgment on the actual sound of the master. And really, the results were not good. The track came back way too compressed, and the low end had been boosted way too much. So it's not a good start. Also, the vocals had been squashed, with the leads losing clarity. To be fair though, the engineer told us to increase the low end in the mix prior to the master, as doing it in the master is not so transparent. A fair point. So we remixed it with a touch more bass and a few other minor tweaks after re-referencing again to the Guetta track to give the mastering engineer a better chance. Here's a comparison of the original and master, and when we do these comparisons we'll always volume match so you can hear the difference fairly. This particular engineer said we can have revisions, so this is a good point. So we told him what we thought, and the second mastered version was better. The low end was fine, but the vocals were still over-compressed and were still fighting with the background elements. They weren't as clear as the original mix. So we asked for one more revision, clearly explaining all of this, and the third version was still not that great. The vocals were still unclear. We also got the impression that the engineer was trying to get our opinion as to what the mix needed, rather than saying to us, your mix needs XYZ, with his professional experience. So summary of this one, the service was good and the communication was great, but the masters were just poor and over-compressed. But this is definitely not to say that all engineers on Sound Better operate this way. Not at all. Maybe we just got unlucky with our selection this time, and we have used Sound Better before with things like singers, and we've always had a very, very good experience. On to the next one. This is still done by a human. High price range, it's Abbey Road. You don't get more prestige than Abbey Road. £130 per track, including tax, and with a choice of engineer. Abbey Road is one of the most famous studios in the world, who regularly record and mix the most famous artists. They now have an online mastering service where you upload your track and an engineer masters it in the Abbey Road studio. Again, we explained in the notes that we're shooting for the frequency response of the Getter Little Mix track. There was no communication prior to the master. We had a choice of about 7 or 8 engineers, and we chose one that had experience of pop and dance music. Some of the others are more experts in like the rock area or easy listening, that type of thing. This cost an extra £20 to choose the specific engineer. That is included in the £130. So how long did this master take? It took about 2 days. And how did the master sound? So to our ears, the track came back with just limiting and possibly some light compression as well. There didn't appear to be any EQ change at all. And compared to the first master we got back, oh my god, this is completely different. So it creeps into your mind, is this, dare I say it, a lazy master with just limiting, or is it a compliment to our mix, saying that it doesn't need any EQ? It'd sure be great to know, so we asked. We sent a message to the engineer for feedback, and oh my god, check this out. An Abbey Road engineer said our mix was pretty much spot on, which is always good to hear, but a very different opinion to what one of the record labels told us. So we felt rejuvenised and we were confident again in our mixing skills. Here's a comparison of the original and the master. So on to the next one. This is still done by a human. Low price range, about £48 per track, including tax. There's many out there, but we used Audio Animals. How long did it take? Well, this took 5 working days, which is what they say on their website, and this is a very good sign. And it came with very professional delivery and good communication as well. We received 3 versions, which is also good, 16-bit, 24-bit, and high quality MP3. And also a streaming version, which is 24-bit with 1 dB headroom to allow for any conversion done by streaming sites. So we thought this was a nice touch, and they also complemented our mix as well. What were the results of this master? It was a good master, but the engineer perhaps has slightly overcompressed the mid-range. But he obviously feels that this is the correct thing to do, so who's to say this is right or wrong? It just goes to show how one engineer masters to the next. There's huge differences in mastering engineers' opinions. Here's a comparison of the original and the master. The final one we wanted to do is by a robot, i.e. AI, artificial intelligence. And this is quite well known these days, this site called Lander. It's only £7.50 for a one-off master, but they have subscription options as well. Lander is automatic mastering, not done by a human, but it's done by artificial intelligence and algorithms, that kind of thing. And we weren't expecting great results, to be honest. You have a couple of different options when you go through the process. Do you want to choose low, medium or high loudness? And different EQ biases as well. And it costs you more if you want revisions. You have to have a monthly subscription for that. We chose high loudness as the Getter track is very, very loud, and a balanced EQ, as Abbey Road had already told us that our mix balance was good. How long did this master take? Well, just a couple of minutes. And the result was very similar to the Abbey Road master, interestingly, and it was a little bit louder as well. Not much EQ had taken place, a good thing probably, and the loudness was very good as well. And there wasn't any distortion or over compressing as far as we could tell. Here's a comparison of the original and the master. summary of the Lander master would be, well, this was a good master at a fraction of the price, only £7.50. Bear in mind the Abbey Road one was £130. But to give this a proper test, we would need to try maybe 5 to 10 songs to see how good this service really is. We may have got lucky with one track here, and maybe we need to throw a rock track at it, or a track with too much bass or something like that, to see how it reacts. We also did one more test ourselves using the iZotope Ozone plugin, which is a well-known mastering plugin. It's also artificial intelligence, and it's about 400 quid as a one-off payment. It has an auto feature which will analyse the track and then apply various different processes: compression, EQ, dynamic EQ, etc, etc. We have version 8 and there is a version 9 out there, so perhaps it's been improved a bit, but the results were not that great. The lows were boosted too much and the high end had been dipped, making the mix sound a little muddy and darker, which does not suit the track at all or our goals. Of course you can then tweak it to how you want it, which we did, but that is not the point here. This is supposed to be a quick fix for mastering your own tracks. That being said, Ozone is still a great plugin, and if you're willing to dive in and put the time into tweaking the results afterwards, then you can get some good results. As long as you reference a similar commercially released track, which is absolutely essential, then this method should be okay, but it's not for the inexperienced, I would say. Here's a comparison of the original and the Ozone master. So stay tuned guys to the end of this video where we give you loads and loads of great tips on how to prepare your tracks for mastering. And if you want to help out the channel, please press the like button and subscribe to see more videos like this. So what is the summary of all of this and this experiment? The Abbey Road Master was the most satisfying as it comes with the brand, recognition and prestige of quality. But of course it was the most expensive, and it was not all that different from the £7.50 AI version on this occasion. However, you can trust that the engineer really knows what he or she is talking about and has the necessary experience. The AI Master was good too, and we'll be testing this service further to see how it deals with a poorly balanced track. We also learned the difference between mastering engineers. Some boost the top end, some boost the low end, some overcompress it, some put a tiny bit of compression on, etc, etc, etc. There's so much difference between what one engineer thinks to the other. And going forward, now we know what we know, and after practicing several mastering techniques ourselves, I think we're just going to do it ourselves in the future. So here are some tips on what you need to do to your track if you're thinking of getting it mastered before you send it off to the mastering house. Number 1, you have to make sure that your track is mixed really well before you send it to a mastering house. You must understand that the mastering process is not supposed and will not transform your mix into a radio edit supreme, and it will only add the last 5% to your mix. And if your mix is really good, it might even add less than 5%. All the mastering engineer is going to do really is limit the track and perhaps add a bit of EQ to bring it in line with more commercially released tracks. But really, he's not going to do much more than that. If you're an experienced producer and mixer, then you can do this yourself, as long as you reference other tracks. So to sum up, if you're not happy with your mix and you think, oh that's alright, the mastering engineer will sort it out, that is the completely incorrect way to think about things, and it's not going to happen. A good mastering engineer should tell you if they think that the track needs further mixing before they even attempt to master the track. However, if they did that, they might miss out on the money, so I'll let you have a think about that one. Number 2, most mastering engineers will specify what format they want the track in and what condition. Generally, they want a WAV or similar lossless format, and the mix to have no compression or limiting on the master bus. Compression on group buses is fine. And also on the master out, make sure you've got around about 6 dBs of headroom, meaning that your track should never be even close to peaking. So check this before you bounce the track down. And number 3, always ask what the mastering engineer did afterwards. This way you can learn and start to realise what you're doing well and not so well in your mixing. Don't expect to get an essay or to learn any secrets, but even a sentence or two from the engineer can help you highlight and improve your mixing. So this whole process and experiment took a long time, and if you appreciate it and got a lot out of this video, please do press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more similar videos to this. All the best guys, bye bye.